Well, Merry Christmas Eve to everyone. I'm so excited to be joining you today talking about coping with the holidays with a narcissist. I know a lot of us are going to go into family settings where we have to handle people who are difficult. Maybe you already have plans later today where you're going to hang out with family. Maybe it's not till tomorrow or this weekend. But most of us, at some point, at some time over this week, we're going to be seeing people that we have pretty much probably tried to avoid most of this year, but we can't avoid them this time of year. So I'm super excited to have you join me today. I'm going to be mostly taking your questions. I'm not going to do a whole lot of, usually if you are with me much, you know that I come on and I do a lot of education. I just love to teach. But today I'm going to be taking more of your questions because I want it to apply to what you're facing today. I want it to be about what you're struggling with, the kind of situations that you're facing. So I want it to be, it's my gift to you that we get to focus on your agenda, not so much on, on mine. Although I hope that my agenda is helpful to you and where you're at and what you're needing. But I really want to make this about you. So because of that, I'm going to wear my glasses, which I get very vain about that. And but today I want to be able to read what you guys are writing and really focus on what it is that's happening in your life. So, happy New Year! I'm sorry, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's to you all. I don't plan to be on next week, so I won't be seeing you. Actually, do I? Maybe I will. I don't know. I have to think about it because it's going to be on New Year's Eve, and I don't Christmas. I'm sorry, New Year's Eve, and I don't really want to be live on New Year's Eve, but I may plan to go live at some point. But I'm trying to take a lot of the week off and just recuperate. So, but thank you for hanging out with me today. For those of you who are new to my platform, who don't know who I am, I'm Dr. Kerry Kerr-McAvoy. I am, and Connie, I see your question. I will happy answer. No, I'm not married at the time. I'm Dr. Kerry Kerr-McAvoy. I am a clinical psychologist. These days, I'm primarily retired. I do a few consultations, but I mostly do more. I have a podcast called Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse. I lead several group coaching programs. I also have a membership where we do a lot of group coaching inside of the membership called Toxic Free Relationship Club. And I do a lot of this with Lisa Sunny, Stronger Than Before. Some of you may know who she is. Her and I tend to do a lot of joint work together. She is now the co-host of Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse. And I'm so excited to see that this week that I have been, that the podcast is ranking in the top 50 for Apple mental health category, top 50, where today I think we're sitting at 55 or something. So it's been amazing, and it's all because of you. The fact that you guys are our listeners and that you're what it's about. The fact that we're talking about the issues that are close to home and what you're struggling with. And so many of you reach out and tell me that it's been helping, that it's, some of you even tell me that it's what you put on just to sort of keep in the background to keep your feet on the ground. And I want you to know that it means so much to me that, often I'm talking to the me that I was in that toxic relationship, trying to survive, trying to figure out what was real, what was true, trying to figure out what I should do next. So I know a lot of times I'm speaking to the me that I was. So I'm just really, really thankful that it's helpful to you. Somebody just asked a question, and today I'm going to just taking your questions. I'm going to just really mostly just address where you're at because we're all struggling. The holidays and seasons is a really tough time. But M asks, can my child be narcissistic? That's a really great question, M. There's a lot of different thoughts. So you're going to hear people from different camps weigh in on that. Some people will say it's really impossible to know until somebody hits adulthood. That need to be roughly around the age of 18 for us to know if they're narcissistic. But the more recent thinking coming out, and this comes from Dr. Gregory Lester as well as Dr. Peter Salerno, who wrote a really great book. You might want to check it out, called The Nature and Nurture of Narcissism. Salerno's last name is Salerno, and I need to get a copy of it so I can actually hold it up and show it to you guys. Excuse me. Sorry about that. But it's now being thought that it's a neurological condition, that there are neurological deficits, and that and yes, that the symptoms, according to Dr. Lester, can show up as young as 6, 7, 8, that we can start to see narcissistic traits. I think it's really important. I get edgy as a clinician saying that because too many of us mistaken just childishness, self-centeredness, poor impulse control as narcissism when it's just a kid being a difficult kid. But a child who's struggling with the narcissistic traits is going to show a lot of empathy problems, having a difficult time with self-reflection, just chronically being obtuse to the larger picture and just excessively preoccupied with themselves. It's normal for every child to be like that, but you're going to see this extensively with a child who's struggling with narcissistic traits. So yes, the answer to the question, it's possible, M. It is very much possible. Another question came in, and please feel free to ask me today. Today is about you, so hit me with your questions, guys. So Proteo wanted to know, how do I avoid being competitive or feeling insecure and jealous? And thank you so much for that gift. I appreciate that. So can you say more what you're feeling jealous and insecure and competitive around? Generally speaking, it's around, when we feel that way, it's an indication that we're feeling insecure about something, that something's causing us to feel less than or not quite safe. And that maybe there's also losses. I want to do a TikTok on that. I want to do a video on that, talking about how often we mistaken the pains of grief and loss as something else. We don't recognize it's really another feeling. We instead interpret it as something's wrong, or I don't have the right kind of closure, or I got to fix it somehow, when really what we're experiencing is grief. We're feeling loss, that there's deep pain about what we wish could be but isn't. So sometimes recognizing that maybe your jealousy or competitiveness is coming out of a sense of insecurity about, are you okay? Can you show up as yourself? Do you have in your life what you need to have? And then what can you do to sort of change those things in your life so that you have greater control and more satisfaction? Sometimes focusing on those things per se can really help us feel less competitive, feel more secure, and make peace with the fact that life is what it is. Because the truth of the matter is, none of our lives are going to ever look like anybody else's. And everybody's lives is a mix of good and bad. No one has the perfect life. We all have things that are less than, or sacrifices that we're making. We all are living with losses and some form of handicap and disabilities, honestly. So coming to terms with that and finding a way to make peace with that really helps calm those feelings down. And Michael B62, thank you so much for just saying thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that I know that I did respond to you, and I'm glad that my response was helpful. I do try to respond to everybody. I mean, if you send me an email or even reach out on a DM, as long as it's not like frivolous, like, I can tell you're just being, there's something manipulative about it, I usually try to respond if I can. Oh, blissful ASMR, your ex is getting released today and you need to stay strong. So yeah, so are you anticipating there's going to be retribution or some payback for the consequences that your ex has suffered? That's what I'm guessing, blissful, is that you're feeling and very fearful about that. Yeah, I'm rooting for you too. I really hope that you're able to stay strong too, because that sounds scary. Honestly, it sounds scary. I would have some backup plans if I were you, some safety plans. Like, who could you enlist in your life as a 911 call? Maybe you can have a safe word that you would text that would say this person needs to send some kind of legal force to your home or to reach out to you. But I would definitely think about ways to make yourself more secure as you're preparing for that. But thank you for sharing that. That's really a big thing today. And today of all days, really, that's wild. April asks, how do I keep things calm in a relationship until I'm able to leave? And I just can't do it right now. So April, what I recommend is just try not to get pulled in to things. You know how they love to stir up drama and arguments and just to be provocative. Use the acronym JADE to help you remember. JADE stands for don't justify, don't attack, don't defend, and don't explain. And I know a lot of people have very mixed feelings about gray rock, that it could be seen as provocative or difficult. What I mean when I say gray rock, I mean just stay emotionally detached and don't bite. For example, if someone like starts in on it, like, did so and so do such and such? I told them that. You're just like, I don't know. I don't know what happened there. You know, you say it. Did you hear the tone of my voice? I conveyed true lack of knowledge. I wasn't sarcastic. You can hear there's some sincerity in that. I wasn't trying to stir up anything. So if you can use that kind of like body language, vocal tone, and keep your answers short and just don't bite. And you know that they'll say things that are hurtful. You know they're going to get the backhanded insults, the slurs, there you go again, or what's up with you, or you're awfully quiet today. You know you're going to get that and expect to get that. And if you can find a way to sort of just soothe yourself inside and sidestep it, that will really help go a long ways to just keeping the peace until you can have until you're on a better footing and ready to leave. I found, April, that I often played along. I just didn't ring anything up. I stopped fighting, and I actually probably looked like I was pretty compliant. But really what I was doing was I was preparing myself to do a really hard thing. And I just wasn't, I didn't want to antagonize anything. But here's another danger point, and this may not be your situation, April, but it is other people's situation. With the more sociopathic or psychopathic partner, they're going to feel that something's up. They're going to get suspicious. So you may have to also, in some ways, be enough of yourself that you don't stir up their paranoia, because you don't want them to increase their surveillance of you. So be really careful and kind of watch that minefield, because that can get pretty tricky. Janae said, my daughter's in residential right now, struggling with cluster B traits, and it's so hard because she's 16. It is hard. That is tough to see our kids really struggle with it. I hope she's getting good kind of help so that she's can heal and sort of get some better skills underneath of her. I hope that she's getting some DBT, for example, so she's learning some self-soothing steps and processes. That would be really, really helpful. Yeah, you're worried about the hoovering. Yeah, so Blissful, what part of the hoovering are you worried about with your ex coming out? Oh, I see you wrote some more. I still care about him and I don't want to get pulled in, especially for the holidays. Well, the best way to be not pulled in is to anticipate what the hoovering is going to look like and anticipate how it's going to feel emotionally for you. So what I would say to myself is, it's the holidays. I'm feeling a little lonely. Of course, I'm missing not being in a relationship. You know, he's going to pull all the stops out. So this is going to be tempting. I mean, I would have that kind of conversation with myself so that I would be prepared for my vulnerabilities. And I would also know, I would remind myself that the real person this person is how they behave when no one's watching. It's not the good stuff. That's actually manipulation. It's the bad stuff. It's the real stuff. I'd remind myself, don't get pulled in by this good person. Don't get pulled in by saying, oh, he's changed and he saw the light and he, had this massive like aha because of his serving out his term. Don't fall for that. Real change. This is what real change. So I'm going to give you a picture of what real change looks like. What real change looks like is a person who is remorseful, can identify where they went wrong, and also identify that the fact that it went so terribly wrong, they can probably never make it up. They would also know that they have blown through and burned the bridge with you, and they accept that as a real consequence to their behavior. And they would want the best for you, including you moving on with your life. That's what real remorse looks like. That's what real regret and healing looks like. So Blissful, if you don't see that, if you see anything about him needing it back and he missed you, you were the best thing that ever happened to him, this is a person who's not actually remorseful. This is a person who's expressing selfishness. So I think if you can keep that cleared, keep that in your mind, keep that clear, it will really help you recognize this as what it is, which is manipulation. Great question. And let us know, will you come back on another one of my lives and circle in and let me know how it goes? Because we'd all like to support you here. We want you to know that you're not alone in facing this, that there's real help here. So, and Dee, I'm glad that you're not being bothered. That's awesome. What if they start to change all of a sudden when they break up? Skyfer, that's a fantastic question. It's what a lot of us want to know. What does real change look like? So think about it from yourself. Think about how do you change? So say that you did something catastrophic to another person, catastrophic. You changed their life, the trajectory of their life, and how would you feel? Chances are you would feel incredible regret, like you knew that you could never make up for it, that there's no such reparations for that person. You would know that, you would recognize that. Then you would want the best for that person. You would stay out of their life and you'd want the best for them. And then you would start to get your act together and do better in your life. You would start to handle money better. You start to handle your other friendships better. You'd start to be a better worker at work, a better colleague, a better employee. You would start to pull yourself together, and you would also know that to request that person back is a privilege that you probably have lost. That's what real change looks like. So when somebody comes to me after a relationship who's really blown it and then wants to get back as if nothing happened, I know this is not actually a real turning, a real pivotal point, because none of the things that are hallmarks of true crises is there. And then I would recognize that this is a person who's it's protest behavior. That's what it is. So have you guys heard of the word protest behavior? When a child doesn't get what they want, what do? They melt down and fuss and plead and they beg. Picture yourself at the grocery store. You're checking out and they want to get into the candy stand behind you, and you're about ready to go home and have for dinner, and you said no. So there's a puddle. Your child becomes a puddle on the floor. That's protest behavior. So what we see when people come back after we've set a consequence and we hold the consequence is protest behavior. It's not actual change. It's just a form. The child in the puddle on the floor is hoping oh, mom's going to feel sorry for me, maybe take pity on me and do this. No, that's what that is. It's just a form of manipulation. And this is an adult form of manipulation. So, Michael, you've gone no contact again. I'm so thrilled that you're doing that. That's awesome. I know this is a tough thing. Way to go. That's awesome. Really, way to go. And I'm glad, Blissful, this has been helpful to you. Really, really helpful. A lot of girls struggle with that being a victim mentality, but they grow. A lot of us struggle with victim mentality. In fact, you know who the biggest victims in the world are? Narcissists are. They always are whining about how life's not fair. And think about the root of jealousy. The root of jealousy says that you should deserve whatever it is that you want, and the fact that you don't get it, then that's not fair. And so you feel resentful, and then you want to take away from other people what they have because you think you deserve it more. The root of jealousy is rooted in victimhood. So the biggest victims in the world isn't really actually women. It isn't even people pleasers. The biggest victims in the world are narcissists and other toxic people who walk around feeling like they should get whatever they want whenever they want it. It's just amazing how we can, and you know what? They're the one that changes the dialogue and says, how dare you think you're a person who gets to come in here and have your rights and needs and demands alongside of mine, because in my reality, only I exist. You don't exist, only I exist. See, so then they label you for being as a victim for wanting what's normal and healthy and fair. It's just crazy. It's really, when you think about it, if you stand way far back, it's just crazy. It's silly. Thank you so much, Nellie. I appreciate that compliment. I'm way behind you guys if you haven't noticed. And I appreciate you guys following me too. Thank you so much for that as well. So flatbed queen. Wow, I love that. So that means you must drive a truck. That you drive a big truck, flatbed queen? That's cool. That's super cool. My partner is a narcissist, and I'm struggling to let go, even though 3/4 kids would lose. Yeah, it's hard to leave. I want to let you know that it's so confusing. We know it's going to be a profound loss. One of the other things that happens that just makes leaving super hard is we know these people don't lose well. They don't deal with failure well. So they're going to make sure there's massive mutual destruction. So we get scared about that because we don't want to have our whole life blown up, and they're going to make sure that they do blow it up. So there's a whole lot of it. And then we also don't know what's true. They lead us on with just enough good behavior, just enough of the work that we end up thinking this person maybe is doing some, doing the work. Maybe it's not as bad as we think it's going to be, or she. I don't mean to assume that it's just a male. It may be a woman. I don't know who it is you're in a relationship with, but they do just enough to make us think that maybe things are changing. Maybe they get it. And so it's super hard. This is really, really hard about all of that. So I get your confusion. So how do you co-parent with a covert narcissist? Yeah, well, I'm not even sure co-parenting is possible. I think it's more likely that we have to learn to parallel parent, because co-parenting suggests cooperation, and there's not going to be any cooperation. Chances are they're going to be what you do in your house, and there's going to be what this person does in their house, and you're going to have to then unfortunately be managing and mitigating all the stuff that happens at the other partner's house, which is super tough. But I wouldn't look for cooperation. I think that's the first thing, is expect competitiveness, expect this person to be divisive, and expect them to try to pit the kids as us against them. And just expect that. And once we do that, then we can start to sort of stick to our guns better. I'd highly recommend, by the way, if you're not already, Tara, following Angela of Family Court Corner. She also has a website. I highly recommend that you follow her and watch for her tips and strategies of how to handle this. It's something I don't talk a whole lot because I don't have tons of personal experience. I also know that Lisa Sunny talks some about this and has some really great webinars on it, on how to do this, and some things that she's done with Angela as well, where she's done some things together. And this is a good moment for me to plug the Toxic Free Relationship Club. Her and I are now working on that together. We offer group coaching 4 times a week inside that club. So there's always like support when you need it. There's 24/7 chat. We also have an extensive library of the things that we tend to hold behind paywalls, like the webinar with Dr. Krista Milstead and Sandra Brown. Some of her webinars are now available to the members. We also have direct access to us. So if you need to reach out and text us, look for some immediate advice, we're around. So if you're looking for additional support and you want to take it up, really consider giving yourself the gift of the Toxic Free Relationship Club. And I want you to know, and I say this, and some of you have been taking me seriously about it, and thank you so much. That's very, very brave. If you cannot afford the $75 a month, first of all, think of that. You're getting a minimum of 4 group coaching calls a month for a total of only $75. It's a great deal. You'll never get that kind of deal if you join a normal coaching group. Normally they're like $50 to $60 a piece. But if you cannot afford that budget, please reach out to me. I never want your budget restraints to keep you from getting the support. I've gone as low as giving it to people away for $5 a month. I do ask you to pay something. So I want it, but I want it to be realistic, and I don't want it to break the bank. I want you to get the support more than I'm looking to make the money. Now, I know that my money is worth time, but I also really think that doing this alone is too hard. So I want you to know that. And the Healing Strong group coaching starting in January 9th. So if you're out and you're super struggling and you cannot get rid of the triggers, you're struggling with a rumination, you're really feeling like, will you ever find any kind of closure, really consider joining the Healing Strong 12-week group coaching. Really. Yeah, Teresa, I see that. Teresa, it still doesn't mean that you can't reach out and talk to me about that you and I can come to an arrangement. I'm serious. And by the way, Teresa, I recognize you. You're a regular of mine, and I so appreciate you on these lives, the way that you hang out with me. And so it means a lot. So thank you for that. Okay. You have a fleet of trucks, flatbed queen. That's a tough word, by the way. That's so cool. I love that. So, Blissful, your question about why was your ex not as violent with you, to me, it doesn't really matter, because here's what I view as health. And I want to say this to everybody, not just you, but everyone. Health is this. Healthiness is this. A healthy person can hold space for another person and see them as a separate individual, and recognizes they have their own needs and feelings and wants, and is not threatened by that, and actually knows how to support that while holding on to their own feelings, needs, wants, and demands. That they can sit together and support each other in an amazing way. That's healthiness. I hate to say this, but it's rare in the world. Most relation, even as a culture, as a society, we are not a healthy society. We don't tend to respect and see the needs of other people. That's why there's even such things as racism and sexism and all these other isms, is because we tend to don't only see ourselves, and we tend to prioritize ourselves above others. But a healthy relationship is really the ability to hold space and show up equally in a fair, kind of equitable way, in a reasonable way for each other. And it just doesn't happen often. And it really makes it hard that that happens. So back to your question, it doesn't matter that your partner wasn't violent with you. What matters was he didn't see you or respect you. That's what matters. That's what matters. Yeah, I agree. A partner does not have good work relationships, or somebody you meet who doesn't have good work relationships, I would see that as a red flag. That's a warning. This is a person who does not play well in the sandbox. Really, basically, that's what it says. So how do you stop them from blowing your life up? I don't think you can. I think when we're in a relationship with them, if they're and we're sharing things like housing and finances and even who's watching the kids and all of that, that when they destroy their lives, they're destroying our lives. I don't think we can keep that from happening. I think the only thing that we can do is to keep as much separation from them as possible. I just don't see how we can keep toxic people's damage from. I don't see there's damage control for that. So think of it this way. So for example, they don't take care of their car. They break the law. They do something stupid with it. It breaks down on the highway. Now they don't have a car to go to work. You need their income to help pay for the mortgage or help pay for rent. And they now also don't have a vehicle, so they're going to want to use you see what I'm saying? I mean, it just messes our life up. So I'm not for sure how we can keep them from not blowing our lives up. I think the only way is just not to have them in our lives, unfortunately. Yeah, Marissa says alienations turn the kids against the friend's dad and they don't have any respect or compassion. It's amazing to me, Marissa, how this rule really plays out. And that is, children innately know whose relationships are the most fragile, which parent is the most fragile and really has to be caretaken. So kids tend to not rock the boat with the more fragile parent. So they're more likely to kind of go along, keep the peace, do whatever they can do to maintain connection with that parent, because they know that the healthier parent probably can tolerate more loss. Is that fair? No, it's not fair, but it is amazing how that does work that way. I'm glad, Tara, that's been helpful, that piece of advice was helpful. Yeah, flatbed queen. It is fascinating how toxic people will even pit their kids against each other. Absolutely. Yeah, and the other thing that they'll do is they will put kids into a role and they won't see children for who they really are. They don't know how to celebrate a person. They just celebrate roles like, oh, this kid's a smart one, or this is my pretty one, or this is the one you got to watch out for. But they're not really seeing the complexity of the child. But yeah, they don't. It's wild what they do. It's so sad. I lived in a pretty toxic home growing up, and my grandmother would pit me against my parents. She'd ask questions like which was my favorite parent. I mean, just toxic crap. It was awful. It is very draining. I agree. Okay, so Marissa, you came back and responded. You said, oh, this is about alienation with, okay, my husband tried to pit that's flatbed queen. She took and drained all his money as a carpenter, had an affair. Now there's nothing he could do. He's going to therapy, but there's nothing left for him. Here's it, and he's got 5 kids and she's gone and he needs a miracle. The thing is, you know what? The great news is he's got 2 feet, 2 hands, and he's doing the work. I love that. I love that. And I think it's real easy for us to get scared for these people and feel like they got into this really dark pit. It will take time for him to work his way out, but working his way out is also bringing him healing and recovery. A lot of us, I know me myself, when we get out of these relationships, our lives are pretty devastated. I wasn't financially in a terrible shape, but I was in a terrible shape in every other way. I moved back to this country. I was living out of country. I moved back with 2 suitcases. That's all I had. 2 suitcases, an air mattress on my son's apartment floor. My son was sick with leukemia. I didn't have a bank account here. I didn't have, oh, I did too, but it wasn't local. So I had to open a local bank account. I didn't have a car. I had no place to live of my own. I had no furniture. But you know what? It's through those really hard things that we start to find our determination, our resiliency. We start to like redefine ourselves, because this is what I think that happens in these relationships. I think these relationships, in a way, cause parts of ourselves to die, that there's a death of self that happens. And we have to let that self get reborn in the process of the healing. So I think that part of what the redefinition and the struggling and the rebuilding is how this friend of yours is going to find his new confidence, how he's going to shape himself and find his way he's going to experience respect for himself. He's going to also know that whatever he's done, he's earned, and he's going to be more protective of that. So there's a lot of growth that can happen. So yeah, I hear this as a devastating story, but I also believe that there's hope in this story as well. Very much so. My ex, so Mary Beth says, my ex was diagnosed with a delusional disorder that has narcissistic tendencies, and he's guilting our teens. So my question to you is, how sophisticated are your teens in their ability to see through his tactics, his manipulations, and his victimization of himself? You know, part of the things that might really help without you alienate them from him is just to listen to them, ask how that makes them feel. You might want to talk about when it's happened to you in your life and other places and other times with other people, not with him, but use your past as stories for them. You know, give them some suggestions of what really helped for them. But for you to show up and hold space validates the reality of what happens and helps it not to feel like so much gaslighting. So I think that's, you know, you can show up in a way that doesn't gaslight them further. But wow, my heart goes out to you, Mary Beth. What a tough situation. Yeah, so Flatbed Queen, you said that's me. I'm not broke, but I'm emotionally bankrupt. I felt that way too. I didn't feel financially broke. I mean, my problem was my money was in an IRA and I wasn't old enough. So there was sort of this time limit. I could run out of money, but I had enough money that I could make a few years. But yeah, I started scrambling. I started working and building, and that's when I started building this platform. I started writing. I did a lot of writing. I started blogging. I have like hundreds of articles I've written during that period of time. So I was trying to find whatever way I could just to sort of rebuild myself. And then we head into COVID. So that really was a hard time because I'm on my own in a studio trying to I realized, do I have something funny in the bottom of my lip? I may do, and I haven't been watching myself on the screen, but anyway, yeah, but it's a process. It's a real big process. So yeah, and if I have had something funny, thank you guys for your patience. I appreciate that. Becky, I love that you said that you're going through a healing process and you're mourning the person that you once were. That is part of the healing that we all have to do. Is we have to take this big look at our life and say, who am I today? And you are becoming a new person. One of the things I love, and I don't know if you guys know that I have this, but I am one of the founders of Wellness Recovery Retreats. We host 2 retreats a year. The next one is going to be in February in Mexico. It's actually sold out. And then the other one after this, but we have 2026 is open. So if you'd like to go to a 5-day retreat for women of narcissistic abuse, 2026 is already open for booking. But we're going to host one in Orlando, Florida, which really focuses about interpersonal confidence, rediscovering your voice, your power, getting comfortable with it again, because so many of us have lost that ability. So if you're looking to have a really great experience over a short period of time, that's a great way to do it. But it's a transformation. This whole thing is a transformation. We are grieving the person we thought we met that actually we never did. We're grieving that in a way that the reality of that person has died. We're grieving the loss of the dream of the relationship that we thought we'd have. We're grieving the loss of the future that we thought we would get to live. We're grieving the loss of the person that we saw ourselves when we believed that this was the magical relationship that we thought that it was. And we're grieving the loss of our innocence and the loss of our maybe our naivete that we had when we went into these relationships. And we're grieving the loss of all the things that happened that caused intense pain. So there's so much grief. And a lot of us end up experiencing this as we think it's frustration. We think it's a lack of answers. We start to feel like we feel a lot of guilt. We experience a lot of shame. We try to make things, make it change. We try to find closure. We try to like learn all that we can. We try to pursue them and try to see if they can step up and talk to us, but we don't realize that what we're really feeling is grief. That none of that, all the effort you're going to do in that direction isn't enough. It doesn't fix anything. It just makes it feel worse because it doesn't settle that bad feeling inside. So when I recognized that I was grieving, that all this intense anger and angst and pain was really loss, and me suffering the loss, feeling the loss, I'll tell you, it started to like calm something down inside of me. Something profoundly really changed, and I felt less stirred up. I felt more at peace. So try that. That may be something that you can do as a gift to yourself this holiday, is to say, am I grieving? Is this really like I'm sad and I'm angry and I'm upset that this is gone? And that might, if you find that kind of helps you feel better, then maybe it is grief. So I'm terrified. I'm going to jump back up to another question. So Ash says, I have no car, I have no clothes, no food, I have nothing, and I've been in a shelter. That is such a hard place. That is such a hard place, Ash. And I'm sure you're scared. I'm sure you're very scared. It's a process. I think we all get this state of helplessness and hopelessness. And I remember thinking one night, I got really scared about my future too. And I started realizing, you know what, though, I'm not going to die. I feel like I'm going to die, but I'm actually not going to die. But it takes a rebuilding. So I just love that you're reaching out for help, and that you can start to get like really proactive. Like, what are you going to do about tomorrow? What are you going to do about next week? And start to like think short term with baby steps, making short steps into the right direction. And you'll find that this actually is a building process, that every time you solve one small problem, you're starting to move into a new direction. But it is really tough, very much. Yeah, so Becky says, I'm terrified. I'm with a young child, and I think my partner has narcissistic personality disorder. The recognition of this is really hard. And it's a process. So Becky, I think the first thing I want to say to you is, don't think you have to have immediate answers. You're not going to have immediate answers, and there's no immediate decision that you need to make. This is going to be a process of change, and a process of you waking up and deciding what you're going to do about your life. So just kind of like, I know there's probably like, oh my goodness, what's this mean for me? But what it can mean is, stop making yourself vulnerable to this individual. Start being a little more strategic about what you're willing to share and not share. Do a little more building of yourself and your career and your resources. Put more emphasis on you instead of the couple relationship. I think by positioning yourself that way, you will be in a better position, that no matter what you do and what direction you head in, you're going to be better off for it. Yet he's going to gaslight your child. You actually, I know that. We don't even have to. He's going to gaslight you. He's going to gaslight his friends. He's going to gaslight his child. But what you can do is that you can show up in a realistic way for your child, so that you can present the reality. Now, it doesn't mean you talk down about daddy. It may mean you can say, oh, that's confusing. I don't know why daddy would say that. Or to say, you know, I found people sometimes say things like that, but this is what I did about it. Or that's why I sometimes ask and follow up and check with myself to see what I think is real. You can still help the child learn to listen to themselves, trust their own instincts, make their own decision. All of that are things that are very, very possible when you're in these types of relationships. On my way, asked, can I talk about mutism? I rarely spoke up, and I started talking in my sleep. Oh, that's interesting. So mutism isn't something I've done a whole lot of research into, so I'm just going to talk about what I know about it off the top of my head. But I'm I'm urging you to kind of check into it to validate how accurate I am. I'm not for sure I'm 100% accurate, but when you're in a state of fight or flight, there are four states to it. There's fight, which is where you get combative, you push back, you get snarky, you lead with your anger, you lead with antagonism. Then there's flight or fleeing, and that is where you withdraw, you detach, you disappear, you move into the wallpaper. Then there's fawning, which is often mistaken as people pleasing, which is really what you sort of go along, you don't rock the boat, you try to keep this person, you try to stabilize the relationship and the person so that things go better for everybody. And then the last one, which is really the ultimate state of freezing, is called freeze. It's a state of psychological and physiological shutdown. It's when you don't know none of the other things, strategies have worked, so you find that nothing's working, so you just stop altogether. And I think one of the part of mutism is a part of freezing. It's where we lose our voice and we get afraid, so terrified of speaking up, we don't speak up at all. We can't speak. We can't speak. I had periods where I literally couldn't speak. I'd argue with myself in my head. I'd like say something. You should say something. You should stop this. You could like confront this. And I couldn't say anything. I literally I couldn't speak. It was like, I can't describe it. It was horrible. I had to shove myself psychologically. Open your mouth, say something, say something. And that's what it felt like for me to be mute. But it was those moments of utter freezing. Now think of a rabbit. There's a coyote that's right up on top of that rabbit. The eyes are bunged and staring wide-eyed. It's quivering and shaking, and it literally can't move. The rabbit can't move. That's called collapse. It's a physiological collapse in fear. And I think mutism is a minor state of that. It's interesting you start speaking in your sleep. I don't know what to make of that. I just find that fascinating that it sort of came up that way. Yeah, there's a part of me, I hated feeling it because it's a miserable feeling. It's a terrible, terrible feeling, that paralysis. That's what it felt like. It felt like paralysis, like I couldn't move. And I also know it's very dangerous to be in a state like that we do need to move. So there's a part of me that I don't want to ever experience again, unfortunately. Oh, that's interesting. You said if he opens the door while you're sleeping, you jump up and scream. Now that tells me, April, that you're experiencing a form of, that's a hypervigilance, that your amygdala is very overactive. And that's why you're reacting like that, is that your body it's almost like it's like somebody at war. When you're living in a war zone and every twig breaking could be an enemy sneaking up on you, so you're alert for that. So that's what it says to me, that you're on hyper alert. Okay. Oh, Lori, thank you so much for the podcast. I'm glad you're hanging out with me today too. That's wonderful. Yeah, you pushed through it. We ate out if you ate on food banks with no electricity. We do what we have to do. We can do really hard stuff, all of you. I want you to know we can do hard stuff. Toxic people want to annihilate you. Your best revenge is not getting back at them. Your best revenge is to rebuild your life bit by bit, piece by piece, step by step. And all of us can do it, regardless of our situations. Whether we're financially wiped out, whether we're psychologically wiped out, whether we've been literally all our social support system has been wiped out, whether we've lost our job, whether we've been taken to a new country and had to start over, we can rebuild. You have it in you to do this. I know you do. I know you do. So many of us have done it, and you can do it too. And we're here behind you. We want you to do it as well. We really do. Yeah, so hopeful. It sounds like your reaction was more of a fight reaction. You yelled, you spoke up, you begged, you did all this work. So you were more tend to come out fighting. And you know what? When I did say something, when I got out of that freeze mode, no, it didn't make anything go better. And I was really terrified of the mine would become violent with me. That was what I was terrified of. But what I found was, okay, so I'm going to give you guys a tip. Here's a big tip. And it hit me why this tip works. It's pattern interruption. You've heard about how we have a lot of patterns, and that they have patterns, sort of like, that circular fight. It always goes in this typical pattern where it starts here, and then it goes to here, and then it goes to there, and there's never any ending. It's just this exhausting circular thing that you end up feeling like you just finally stop because you run out of energy and you run out of gas. Okay, so here's how to pattern interrupt, and also how to break out of the mutism. So force yourself to speak, but what I want you to say when you're speaking is this. I want you to find the statement, the boundary that you're holding internally, and I want you to repeat that boundary out loud. So say, for example, you found out something devastating. I'm going to give you what happened to my situation. One of the last times I froze in a very significant way was I caught him texting another woman. And I suspected that I knew who it was, and I knew it was bad, that he was up to no good. And he was trying to pretend that he didn't, that I didn't see it, but I did see it. I watched him do it for a while. I knew it was real. So what I did was, the boundary I had decided earlier on that I'd never held before was, if I caught him cheating like that or doing anything like that, that I was going to change what I was going to do, that I was going to have to do something different about the relationship. There's going to be a consequence that I was going to do around that relationship. So I finally found a way to open my mouth and say, "You're texting someone." "No, I'm not." I said, "Yes, you're texting someone." "I was not. I was texting my mom." I said, "That wasn't your mom. I saw the photo. You were texting a woman. It wasn't your mother. I know what your mother looks like." "Okay, it was my sister." I said, "You're texting someone. Now I'm going to have to think about what I'm going to do." And I said, "And if it was your mom, you wouldn't mind me seeing the phone. I've deleted it. Okay, so now I know you've done something you shouldn't do. I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to do." And that's where I went. So I just said, "This is what I saw. This is the truth. I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to do." And I just said that over and over and over. And I wouldn't stop. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to become a broken record of whatever it is. Like, "I'm not talking about that," or "We'll decide when we get home," or "I don't know what I'm going to do." But whatever it is, it doesn't even have to be a clear answer, but whatever it is, stick with that answer and repeat it ad nauseum. Like, literally be like an old-fashioned broken record. Repeat it over and over and over, that same message. When you do that, because you're now not fighting, remember, you're now following Jade. You're not justifying, you're not attacking, you're not defending, you're not explaining. You're just stating your position repetitively. That throws them off. It literally breaks the whole thing apart. So after a while, he said, "Fine, all right, you're right. I was doing that." And you know what? It didn't matter. I mean, I already knew the truth. I still meant I had to figure out what I was going to do, and I was going to sort that out for myself. But I found that it by-stepped this whole exhausting, repetitive thing that we always did. And it really, really helped. So try that. Try that style of pattern interruption to really help you get out of that. Okay. Yeah, so Hopeful says her husband's communication style is yelling or aggressive speech. Don't engage. That's one way to really disrupt that, is just not to engage. To act like, yeah, that's normal, whatever, and not to get all thrown off and shook up by it. A lot of them lie. Yeah, Michelle, most of them are liars. They're lying to themselves first, and then they lie to everybody else. It's because they can't face the truth of what they're doing, and they also recreate reality all the time. I was just explaining this to people in my Toxic Free Relationship Club. They have this weird thing because so we have this ways of dealing with stress. It's called defensive style. And from the moment we're born, we already have a defense. We activate these defensive styles to help protect us from being psychologically overwhelmed. Well, narcissistic people use these really early primitive, that's what it's called, primitive, early defensive styles. And one of the early defensive styles that we learn is called compartmentalization. Now, you do it too. We all compartmentalize. That's a normal thing. But they use it extensively, like way too much. Now, if I can say that, compartmentalization is it's like we put something in a box and we put it away. So when we're upset about something that we don't like, we put it in a box and we put it away, and then hopefully at some point when we're ready, we'll deal with it. But what narcissists do is they put everything into a box. and they literally put it away. So that, and what happens then, once they put it away, is as if that never happened. And this also then causes them to have a disjointed experience with time. So this is how it works. They do something they shouldn't have. They put it into a box, put it away, and in their mind, in that moment, it's as if it never happened. And that's why 5 minutes later, you can try to bring up the same argument, and they're like, "You never let go of anything. That was in the past." Well, because they put it in a box and they put it away as if it didn't happen. Now, here's the problem with compartmentalization. When you do that to the extent that they're doing it, they then lose the continuity of time. Because they're compartmentalizing every moment, then the past ceases to have any influence and they can't learn from their past mistakes. And it does another double whammy, and that is they also can't then anticipate failure in the future because they can't see where it went wrong before. So that's why they can't seem to sort of see the things that they're stepping in is going to not work. They can't anticipate, oh, this is a dumb idea, or this is really unrealistic, or this is going to go bad, because they compartmentalize their life to such extent there's no continuity of time from being able to learn from other mistakes and being able to predict into the future. It's really crazy. And that's one of the things that often happens in the relationship is we see that and we say, no, that's going to go wrong. Don't do that. This is really bad. And they tend to then blame you, attack you, say that you're a spoiled sport because you don't ever want to do anything fun. But you're then experiencing it from the lens of time and from the experience of past failures, so that's why you're so concerned. So Teresa's asking a great question. How do you help with this? You can't. That's the problem. You can't get somebody to stop compartmentalizing who's over relying on that as a defensive structure. It's because of their inability to tolerate failure, their difficulty handling pain, their difficulty knowing how to manage difficult emotions. All of that causes immaturity, a psychological inability, and that makes them unable to do that. So unfortunately, we can't fix those things for them. And our best protection is just simply not to be in a relationship with somebody who's broken that way, who has deficits that way. Yeah, so back to the question I was talking about earlier about the pattern interruption, about just finding that statement and staying on that point. So I don't know how Anna Zia, boy, I'm sorry about my voice today. So she said, I feel bad because I'm the one yelling and getting aggressive and reacting to everything. I try not to, but I get so mad and hurt that before I know it, I'm doing it. I totally get that. That's because you're emotionally invested in a relationship. So think about it this way. A healthy relationship is based on people throwing themselves in, caring about another person, really going into this with your whole self. Toxic people don't do that. They go in very protective and very self-motivated and self-interested. So they defend themselves constantly. They're never, if this was a hokey pokey, which I played that as a kid, they never put the whole self in. They'll give you an arm, maybe they'll give you a left leg, maybe they'll give you the head briefly, but they never put their whole self into the relationship. But you have. And when you experience that loss, that disconnection, the betrayal, the not seeing you as a real person and attacking you or minimizing you or gaslighting you, it's enraging because your whole self is in this relationship. And yeah, that then makes us really reactive because we're hurt, because we're invested. It's a reflection of your investment. The opposite of love is not hatred or aggression or anger. That's actually a sign of emotional fusion. That means you're very invested in this person. The opposite of love is indifference. It's apathy. So when you see that, that's a sign to yourself that you're still very invested in this relationship. So I'd recommend find ways to start to detach, to become less invested. But hear me on this, guys. If you followed my advice about how to survive being around a narcissist, I'm actually teaching you how not to be invested in a relationship. Don't do this to a healthy relationship. If you do this to a healthy relationship, you will destroy it, because healthy relationships are built on investment. They're built on investment. So if you detach, you're actually destroying the relationship. But we have to do it for our self-protection. It's the only way to manage our own. Otherwise, we become destroyed, emotionally destroyed, staying invested in these relationships. Yeah. So, do they marry for pity? No, I do not believe toxic people marry for pity. I believe toxic people marry because they fall in love with their own idealistic dream. I think they walk around with this unrealistic hope that somehow someone's going to magically fix what's wrong with them, what's broken inside them, and they find somebody they think offers this idyllic, hopeful, optimistic possibility, and then they see you having resources that they don't have, and so then they step into that with this wishful thinking, almost magical thinking, that this is going to fix all that's wrong with their lives, which is why they jump from supply to supply. They have an insatiable need. So what's I heard this from Dr. Lindsay Gibson, and I really loved it. It's called receptive capacity. So everyone has, so right now you guys are hanging out with me, and as you're hanging out with me, you're hearing me say things, and maybe some of these things are really hitting and they're helpful, and you're taking it in. That's called you're receiving what I'm saying. You have a capacity to receive what I've said. That's good receptive capacity. But with toxic people, with personality character disturbances, they have what's called low receptive capacity, meaning, so they would sit in this list here and they would hear what I'm saying, and as much as it might even feel helpful or accurate, it's draining out as fast as they're hearing it. So picture this like a colander or a sieve, and you're pouring in support, pouring in love, pouring in compassion, pouring in attention, and instead of it like filling the basin and making them feel better and soothed and helped, it's draining right through the bottom as fast as it comes in, just draining right through. So no matter how much you give, no matter how much you try to save, no matter how much you try to like fix or love or whatever, it's pouring through them as fast as it's coming in. That's a them problem. They make it a you problem because they don't like the feeling and they want it fixed, but they have to learn to fix it themselves. Unfortunately, we can't fix it for them. Yeah, it's so the way they do it then is to say, I'm not the one having a problem. You're doing it wrong. You don't love me enough. You don't help me enough. You're not coming through enough. You're not being enough. It's you are the problem, because they don't like the ownership, the fact that if they have to sit with this idea of they have to learn how to fill themselves up, then that makes them responsible, and then they have to be accountable, and then there's consequences. I don't want any of that. They want the easy route, the cheap route, which is to say they'll just bring different people in, and then maybe that will fix it, or they'll pursue somebody new, or they'll have somebody on the side, or they'll, you know what I'm saying, they'll just fix it in all these sort of these fast, quick ways, but none of it works because it also pours through and pours through and pours through. What's broken? That's a great question. Tired of it too. What's broken is they have internal psychological deficits. Internal psychological deficits. We all have egos. We all have a whole set of strengths and skills, every single one of us. We have like the ability to self-reflect. We have the ability to delay gratification. We have the ability to plan. We have the ability to feel our feelings and know what we're feeling. We have the ability to actually do something with our feelings. But every one of us has strengths and weaknesses on each of these indexes. So some of us are really great at some of these things, and some of us are really bad at other things. Ability to see other people and recognize them, the ability to care about other people's feelings, the ability to have a conscience and know what's right and wrong, and then want to do what's right. And what happens with some of us, and they've actually shown it in Nature. There's an article in Nature that has side-by-side comparisons of I think it's a functional MRI, I think, and they have side-by-side comparison, and the brain of a narcissist is functioning different than a brain of a normal person. So these innate deficits cause them the problems with intimacy, with self-reflection, the ability to be intimate, as well as empathic, self-direction. They have all these deficits. And because of these deficits, then it makes it really hard for them to then know how to take care of themselves and meet their needs. So somebody ever asked, do they ever fix themselves? Yes, if life gets painful enough and you get confronted enough, and the mechanisms they use for manipulations don't work, then sometimes they then have to sort of get real and start to do something different. But a lot of them, they're so good at jumping to acting out and to doing the next thing. They get into addictions, they move to a new relationship. They do a lot of these things so quickly that a lot of times they never really like heal. They don't slow down enough to really do the hard work of healing. And Super Sloth, it's so good to see you, Louise. I'm thrilled that you're here, and thank you for the Christmas wishes. I know there's another Kerry who's in the comments, so maybe you're talking to her, but I'm going to take it from me too. So you're saying hello to the both of the Kerrys. Kerry, hey Kerry, so good to see you here too. And Mariel, I'm so glad that you're cooking and listening to me. That's on Christmas Eve. I really, really appreciate that. Oh, I'm so thankful, Rosie, that you just feel like you're healing just being here, hanging out and listening. And I'm sorry, I don't know what I got going. I didn't even eat anything today yet. I don't know why I've got this thing in my throat, but I know my son's on his way over. My son's going to hang out with me this afternoon playing some games. Tomorrow we're going to play board games, grill on the grill, because we're in Texas. For those who don't be jealous, I know. Just remember, in the summer we have 110 degrees heat. But today I think it's like in the 60s, very pleasant. For those who know Celsius, it's like in the 21, 22 degrees Celsius, about 60, maybe 65. Very nice day. So, yeah. How do you explain? Okay, I'm going to take this as my last question today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and just making this a nice Christmas Eve. But this is a fantastic end of Christmas or end of the live question. How do I explain a breakup to people who don't understand narcissism, who probably thinks that you're being upset over silly stuff, small stuff, when it's really not? I don't really know a good way to say it, because if they're immature and they don't understand what healthy relationships should look like, you're not going to say anything to convince them. So just know that. So people who are just bound and determined to not care about how you feel as a human are not going to respect the fact that you did not feel valued, loved, and supported as a person. But I would say something like this. Well, it didn't work out. This relationship really struggled to allow both of us to show up in an authentic way where it created a lot of safety. And it just felt best for us to end it. I'd say something like that. I wouldn't get into a whole lot of details of, I think he's a narcissist and he was lying and gaslighting me a lot. And I really never knew who he was. And I'm talking as if this is a man. Please, men in the audience, know that this is applicable to women too. It's not just to men. This is applicable to anybody who's a narcissist. And I know that the rates of occurrence is nearly 50-50, so I do know that. But yeah, I would say something like that. That relationships should be mutually safe, where we feel like both people can show up and be themselves, and then we just weren't able to create that kind of connection. And so as much as I'm sad about this, it was best that we went our own way. I'd say something like that. So they don't really need to know. I think one of the things this is a sign you've been gaslit a lot. When we've been gaslit a lot, we feel like we have to give a lot of explanation, that everybody needs to know everything, and in order for us to justify that it was real, that our feelings mattered, that it was our perception. We don't need to do all that work. It's not really none of their business. So, all right, you guys, I will come on next week. I don't know when, but for those who are on TikTok, the way to know is usually I post it on Facebook or YouTube. But we're going to talk about the trauma bond. Next week, I want to get into everything about the trauma bond. You'll also see my newsletter come out on that. Yeah, no, yes. Louise, you're over-explaining. Definitely is because of the autism too. Yes, as another autistic person. But also, being gaslit a lot will cause us to also over-explain, because we don't trust our own reality because we've been taught not to. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really, really appreciate it. And it's fun. I'm glad that we just got to take questions and talk about what's most important to all of you today. And I'm really sending you a big, big virtual hug and much love from me and my family to you guys. And bye-bye.